It's Monday, May 12, 2025. Welcome to Make It Make Sense. I'm Grant Herms. Today on the show, what is habeas corpus? The White House is looking into whether it can try people in courts without ever actually having them go to court, which is, bad. But what does it actually mean? But first here, a little bit of housekeeping. Those of you who have been listeners, don't adjust your dials or check your feeds. I know it's Monday and I'm here. Don't worry, you didn't mix up your dates on your calendar. Make It Make Sense has a new schedule starting this week. For the past few weeks, I've been thinking about retooling the show a little bit to make sure that you're getting the best possible episodes that I can put out, and maybe ones that are a little less dense without losing the sense that's made from these things. So episodes will now drop on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and then on Friday, you'll still get expert interviews, but they'll be a little bit longer than normal, which that way they'll be ready for you to listen to on Saturday or Sunday when you're running errands or doing things around the house or in the yard or maybe just relaxing, although I don't know if these interviews are always that relaxing. But because things are changing, make sure that you are following and are subscribed on whatever podcast app you listen to this on and on YouTube. Leave a comment and review there. It really helps the show out. And then there's going to be a new schedule for the Substack as well, where I'll have even more new stuff going up every single day for paid subscribers. So be sure to become a paid subscriber if you're not already. It's just $5 a month. A link on how you can do that is in the show's description. All right, but with that out of the way, let's get to the actual episode today. What is habeas corpus? So over the weekend, the big talk around Washington and in political circles was a clip from the White House Deputy Chief of Staff and the architect of much of Trump's immigration policy during his first administration and this administration. Take a listen.
Well, the Constitution is clear, and that, of course, is the supreme law of the land, that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus can be suspended in a time of invasion. So I would say that's an option we're actively looking at. Look, a lot of it depends on whether the courts do the right thing or not.
So that guy is Stephen Miller. He is a noted spreader of white supremacist ideas, so much so that the Southern Poverty Law Center, a civil rights legal organization, has a whole page dedicated to him. He also said in 2020 that ending asylum for people who are, fleeing their home countries because they're afraid for their lives was all he cared about, saying, I don't have a family, I don't have anything else, this is my life. So, he seems like a nice guy. But I don't bring that up just to drag Stephen Miller here. It's for context, to say that this is where this guy is coming from, and the idea to suspend what's known as habeas corpus is coming from. Now, at this point, you have heard habeas corpus more than a few times, and I think that most people just don't remember what this was from, high school civics, which is fine. You don't have to know this most of the time. Habeas corpus is the absolutely foundational bedrock idea of civil rights and legal rights in this country, that for a person to be tried for a crime, they need to be brought in front of a judge when they're tried. The phrase habeas corpus is Latin for should have the body or have the body. It means a person needs to be there. It's a phrase that dates back to before the Constitution was even written. That is how old and how serious this has been for a long time. It also lives as a part of the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, which guarantees your right to due process, and is for everyone in the U.S., citizens or not, meaning you get your day in court. It's also explicitly mentioned in the Constitution, too. It's in Article 1, which is the Powers of Congress section, and this is what it says. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus, or the right of habeas corpus, shall not be suspended unless, when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. Now, that's the only time the phrase habeas corpus is written in our founding document. And specifically, like I said, it's in the part about Congress. Hang on to that idea because we'll come back to that a little later. Now, the U.S. has only suspended habeas corpus 4 times in its history. The first time was in the Civil War, where Lincoln suspended it, and it was frankly the most controversial part of his presidency. After that, it was suspended twice in 1870 and 1871 in 11 different states, southern states mostly, to fight attacks from the KKK after the Civil War. It was also suspended in 1905 during a rebellion in the Philippines, but only in 2 provinces in that country while the Philippines was still a U.S. colony, and then it was suspended in Pearl Harbor in Hawaii after the attack on Pearl Harbor, paving the way for what would be Japanese internment camps under what's called the Alien Enemies Act. I'll talk about that in a second. So, if this is guaranteed in the Constitution in at least 2 places, how is the White House looking at suspending habeas corpus? How can they do it? And what would it look like? So, the White House thinks it can suspend habeas corpus because of the part of the Constitution that says it can only be suspended in times of rebellion or invasion. And the administration has been using what's called the Alien Enemies Act to do it. The Alien Enemies Act, and I've talked about it in other episodes, allows that certain civil rights be taken away from people who are from other countries who are living in the U.S., specifically countries we're at war with. This is how those Japanese internment camps happened during World War II. And over several executive orders this time around, the White House has said that immigration as a whole is invasion, which it isn't. They've designated certain drug cartels as terrorist organizations to try to use a war on terror defense or theory to justify their ideas about who and what the U.S. is at war with. And specifically, they've targeted a group called Tren de Aragua, or TDA, which the White House says is controlled by the Venezuelan government so that they can spin TDA members that they find in the U.S. as something like an invasion or an attack on the U.S. by Venezuela. And I want to be clear. Judges in courtrooms across the country, both liberal and conservative judges, have shot down all of these ideas over and over again. But the White House is ignoring those rulings and is still going forward with this line of thinking. Now, the White House wants to do this because they want to speed up deportations. For weeks, the administration has been fighting and, like I said, losing in courts, all the way up to the Supreme Court when it comes to having masked ICE agents who don't identify themselves arrest people they suspect of being in the country illegally, and then putting those people in detention centers, sometimes hundreds or even more than 1,000 miles from home, and then put on planes in the middle of the night to be sent to a foreign prison in El Salvador and maybe soon a prison run by a warlord in Libya. And at every turn, like I said, judges have said the White House can't just ship someone off to another country without at least a hearing in front of a judge to make sure that their rights aren't being violated. The highest profile case of this is Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who I've talked about repeatedly on Make It Make Sense, but as a quick refresher, he is and was, by court determination and the administration's own admission in court, wrongfully arrested and then sent back to his home country of El Salvador without ever seeing a judge, despite having a court order that said he could not be sent back to El Salvador because he had credible fears for his life. And what suspending habeas corpus would do would make that legal as long as a judge signed off on it at any point, but Abrego Garcia wouldn't have to be brought before that judge. It would mean that the White House could go to a federal judge in a state like Texas or Florida where they know that that judge is friendly to what they want to do, and then that judge would just rubber stamp deportation orders without the people that they've arrested being brought in front of that judge to argue for themselves, or even for the judge to make sure or make the government prove that they've arrested and are actually deporting the people they say that they are and that the judge is signing off on. And it would mean that a judge could potentially sign off on hundreds, if not thousands, of deportations every single day that these were in front of a judge. And that idea is scary enough. But then we also got this weekend from a spokesperson at the Department of Homeland Security, which controls immigration in the U.S.
Was anybody else arrested other than the mayor of Newark?
There were multiple people arrested. And Victor, I think that we should let viewers know there will likely be more arrests coming. We actually have body camera footage of some of these members of Congress assaulting our ICE enforcement officers, including body slamming a female ICE officer. So we will be showing that to viewers very shortly.
You say a video of members of Congress body slamming ICE
That's correct.
officials?
That's correct, sir. It's disgusting.
Okay, and so if you have that video, are you suggesting that members of Congress will be arrested who were there yesterday?
This is an ongoing investigation, and that is definitely on the table.
So I'm going to explain this as quickly as possible here. On Saturday, the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, and 3 members of Congress, all Democrats, were doing an on-site oversight inspection of a privately owned immigration detention center in Newark, New Jersey, which they are legally allowed to do, and there is video evidence of them being let in by detention center officials. As they were leaving, Immigration and Custom Enforcement agents, ICE agents, showed up and began shouting orders at the mayor and the members of Congress, essentially accusing them of obstructing ICE from doing its job, which then resulted in the mayor of Newark's arrest and detention at a different facility for more than 5 hours. And while DHS and ICE are sticking to the story that you just heard from that spokesperson, actual reporting accounts from what happened, including video from bystanders and news outlets, and frankly, the ICE agent's own body camera, shows a much less clear confrontation, and one that looks remarkably like it was staged or set up by Homeland Security to intimidate 4 democratically elected politicians, and a confrontation that was then escalated by ICE agents, because the woman that spokesperson was talking about body slamming an ICE agent is 80-year-old New Jersey Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, who in the video, the best one that I could find, at least the most clear that I could find, you can see Coleman is in the middle of her staff who is trying to prevent her from being crushed by ICE agents in body armor. But back to what we are talking about here, by DHS saying the arrests of sitting members of Congress who were there legally and allowed legally into a detention center might be on the way is a huge escalation. And when you put that together with an administration that publicly said it wants to suspend the right to be seen by a judge for the people it arrests, it's not hard to see a scenario where if habeas corpus is suspended, Democratic members of Congress can be arrested and then shipped to a foreign prison after a judge signs off on it because they're signing so many deportation orders and are only taking the administration's word for who these people are and why they're being deported. And I know that sounds crazy, and in a way it kind of is, but it's important when these things happen to think about them like they're happening in another country. Take out U.S. and put in some other place. I'm going to use the fictional country of Sokovia here, which is from the Marvel universe. But this is how the headlines would read. It would say, the government of Sokovia said it was targeting elected members of the opposition political party for criminal charges while also planning to suspend civil rights to be able to arrest and deport people without court hearings, all while masked law enforcement continues to kidnap and detain people in ethnically motivated raids across the country. That's how we would write that if it wasn't happening here. And if you're scared by that, yeah, you should be. Now, there is some good news, though, but it does come with some not-so-good news. Courts have repeatedly said a president can't just suspend your right to be seen by a judge when you're accused of a crime. And remember when I said that it's important to know that the only time habeas corpus is mentioned in the Constitution is in the section about the powers of Congress? Well, that's why. It means that only Congress can approve suspending that fundamental legal civil right. Now, this is the not-so-good news part. On Sunday, on NBC's Meet the Press, their political show on Sundays, the number 2 Republican in the Senate, Wyoming Senator John Barrasso, was asked point-blank if he thought Congress would vote to suspend habeas corpus, and this is what he said.
The president said he is going to follow the law. He was on with you last week. He said he has great respect for the Supreme Court. He said he expects the Attorney General to do the right thing, and I expect that the president will.
Can you just give me a yes or no what you would do, though? Would you support suspending habeas corpus?
I don't believe this is going to come to Congress. Okay. What I believe is the president is going to follow the law. He has said it repeatedly.
So, while he says that he thinks the White House is going to follow the law so that Congress wouldn't even have to worry about it, he is ignoring the fact that the White House has been ignoring an awful lot of these court orders, or at the very least, trying to stall having to do things that courts have told them to do. But he also, and more importantly, didn't say Congress or even he would vote no if the White House said it wanted to suspend habeas corpus. And he left the door open there to something that we haven't seen done in this country for close to a century, and something that, frankly, has never been done in this country when it wasn't at war. And that's the real thing here about why people are talking about habeas corpus. And it did get a little lost over the weekend because there's been a lot of stuff about drug prices and Trump's new plane and all these things. But it's important to keep your eye on the ball here, because this is the thing that could make a major difference in what the administration has been doing in states across the country when it comes to immigration. And I know that's bleak, and I'm sorry to leave it there today, but that is it for today's episode. Please rate and review the show on whatever podcast app you listen to this on. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications on YouTube so you don't miss out on any new videos there. Like I said at the very top of the show, subscribe to the Make It Make Sense Substack. I've got new stuff coming out all the time. It's just $5 a month. And if you don't want to do that, you can always subscribe for free to the Substack and then share everything Make It Make Sense on social media. It's MIMS Newspod. That's MIMS Newspod, all one word on every platform. I am at Grant Herms on X and Blue Sky, and at Grant Herms TV on everything else. Thank you so much for listening today. I'm Grant Herms, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.